Hi everybody, Giselle Grenier here from artplace.ca. In today's video lesson, we're going to be creating a painting study of some rocks that are in water, and we're going to have the water flowing like a tiny little waterfall. And although you can do this freestyle, I'm going to do this study with a little bit more structure. I'm going to be using some charcoal to create my initial sketch. Now, you can get charcoal anywhere, and I want to just show you the different types of charcoal. This is pretty dark. You can get woodless charcoal, which is it's pure charcoal it's kind of like a glossy casing, which is easy to sharpen. You can get your typical charcoal pencils like this, and they usually come in soft, medium, and hard. Then you've got what my favorite are, the actual charcoal sticks. These are what I like using. And then you've got the square charcoal, which is pressed again in different hardnesses. This is just a little charcoal kit from Royal Langnickle. Really convenient because you can cap it and take it out if you want to draw outside. What I recommend is, if you're going to be, regardless of what you're using, if you're going to be creating your sketch like this, holding whatever it is you're using like this, your brain tends to go into logical mode as if you're writing. So you may find that your sketches are tighter. Okay. If you hold your pencil like this, which is not typically how we hold a pencil, you're more free to create your sketch. So this is what I recommend, doing it this way. If you're creating wildlife, people portraits, pet portraits, animal portraits, stuff with finite details, then yeah, doing it this way is one way. But freestyle sketching, you know, when you want to create, you work a composition, do it like this. I also recommend using softer charcoal because it's easy to wipe off. Now, with this particular one here, the rocks are going to have some moss on them, so we're going to have to focus on a light source. So I put my paper this way. This is a Royal Canvas paper, and then I gave it a priming of gesso. Let me just get gesso here. I'm using the new DecoArt line, the premium acrylics, and I'm going to give that a try, see how this works. Anyways, the gesso, and you can use the Americana, the regular DecoArt gesso, DecoArt media, or the Americana premium. They're all intermixable. So coated that, let it dry, and the canvas paper tends to have a bit too much tooth, so adding the gesso just smooths things out a little bit. Got my charcoal, so I'm thinking I want some water up here, so I'm going to, and this is actually kind of dark, I want to make sure you guys can see it, and you can see that I'm really just working some shapes here, and I don't want another rock. Let me think, put another rock. So I'm going to probably end it right about there, and so I've got this one here, which is going to come out here. I want some water showing up there, and then this rock here, let's put this here. Now what I just did now, I've got two repetitive patterns coming up here, so I'm going to change that a bit here. And there's another little rock right there. Mother Nature isn't always perfect. No, I know it's blasphemous, but and then this one here, I want to make this one to be a really hard. I'm trying to give you guys as much different types of shapes that you'd be typically working with when creating some type of rock painting. And as I'm looking at this now, this is the feature rock here, and I'm thinking I want to make this a little bit bigger. Come bring that up. That's not too bad. We'll leave it like that, and I'm going to put some water here. And if I come down, so my goal is to have the water coming down here like a little waterfall. So let's put a big rock here, another rock here, and we'll put a block right here to keep the eye inside the painting. So in here, so I'm going to go to my hard pencil, just so it's much lighter. So what I'm thinking of is the water is going to waterfall right about here, and then there's going to be, this is where the water is going to come in, coming down this way, then it's going to land right about here. So when you've got the water coming down, it's quite rough, and then it starts to smooth out a little bit more here, and then we're going to create a shadow right there. So there's going to be a little bit of water here. So that's kind of what I'm going with now. So we'll see. Now, when creating this, you can use this as your reference point to create the painting. You don't need to make it look exactly like mine, but just to give you, I've got a bunch of different shapes here to kind of give you an idea of what we're going to be working with. I don't like how that's so rounded. There we go. All right. So now we have, now this is way too dark. It doesn't have to be this dark. It should be a lot lighter than this. I'm not going to worry about it because the charcoal will just dissolve with the acrylics, making some pieces darker. Because when we're painting rocks and painting water, you need to create a dark undertone anyways, and then we add our lights on top. So we're going to work with that. All right, so now what I want to do is I'm going to prepare the palette and show you the brushes that I'm going to be experimenting with, and then we'll get started. All right, so what I'd like to do is to show you how I've been setting up my palette. Now, you can see very clearly why I don't use a glass palette on camera because of the heavy reflection coming through the window. That's why I take the palette, whatever colors, and I put them onto the easel on the gray palette paper. So with this, what I have is I have my paper towels. I'm using Viva paper towels, and no, I'm not getting paid to say their name. I just think these are one of the best paper towels out there for artists. And these are the ones that are in the smaller sheets. You can use the full-size sheet. So what you want to do is, depending on what you're painting, I like to create a wet zone about that big. And if you have a stay wet palette, you can use that as well. I just find this to be a little bit more flexible for me. So what I'm going to do is I folded my paper roughly into thirds, and you can fold it any way you want. And I'm going to crumple it up, and I'm going to put it into a container of water. I also have my brush basin right over here, away from my microphone, which is on the other side. And that one's to clean my brushes, and the other container is only for clean water. I'm going to open this up and lay that right about here. When I'm off camera, or when I move the camera, I'm going to bring it down a bit so you can see. All right, while this is wet, then I'm going to take my paints and put them out. Now, just going to go over the colors. Actually, I'll just lay them out as I use them. So I've got Ultramarine blue. Put that out there. I only need about that amount to get started. And these are the DecoArt Premium, the new Americana Premium line. These are their tube acrylics. And then so it's Ultramarine blue. I'm not left-handed. You guys are going to laugh at me. I'm so not left-handed. We've got Quinacridone violet. Now, if you're using DecoArt Traditions, you want to use red violet for this, or permanent alizarin crimson. Now, they don't have a permanent alizarin crimson in the DecoArt American Premium, so that's why I'm using Quinacridone violet. I really hope they do eventually. I just need a touch of Pyrrole Red. If you're using the Traditions, you can use Naphthol Red Light. And then I've got Hansa Yellow Light. You can also use just Hansa Yellow if you want. Let me get my arms in the way here, sorry. And Burnt Sienna, core color. And then Titanium White. And if you don't have any Titanium White, you should, if you're following me. You can use Gesso. Need a good amount of that. All right. Now, I'm also, because right now we're in thunderstorm. We're at a thunderstorm warning right now. Humidity is really building up. I do have the AC running in another room, but it's very warm in here because the studio lights, I've got the door closed for noise. So I'm going to put a little bit of extender right here, and this is more gel-like. If you use the Traditions extender, or even the extender, the regular DecoArt extender. It's a liquid, in liquid form. You mix that right in the paint. I don't want to mix it into the paint. I want it on the side. And then from there, I just take whatever color I need, go onto my easel, and do my mixing there. Now, while we're down here, let's talk about brushes. So I'm going to be doing some experimenting with some brushes here. Let me just get this, come on. Ah, there we go. So what I've got is I've got synthetic brushes. This is the Majestic line. These are number 4 bright and a script liner. May or may not need it. All the supplies are going to be in the supply list provided with the video, so you don't need to take notes. Okay. And then I've got my Supreme, which is the pure bristle. These are not the Aureas, which are the synthetic bristle blend. These are the pure bristles. And I've got a variety of flats and filberts, and these brushes are nice and long. So size-wise, well, let's see, 654, 3, 2 flat, and a 2, 1, 2, and 3 filbert. Again, numbers don't matter. Use the biggest brush that you can stand to do your painting. This is the heavy work. And then, so bristle brushes, the biggest brush, and then the detail work with these smaller brushes. So we've already talked about the Majestic. And these are the Sabletek. Now, I use these a lot for oil painting, and because of the heat and a new allergy that Chaos has developed, I'm doing very little oil painting these days. So I picked up some more of these brushes for acrylics. I don't take acrylic, I can take acrylic brushes, these if I use for acrylics, then I can go to oil painting. But if these brushes, or any brush, has been used for oil painting, you really shouldn't be bringing it back into acrylic painting, because you can never get everything out of a brush if it's been in oils. So that's what I've experienced anyways. So these Sableteks, it's another blend. It's very close to a sable brush, and without going into, you know, heavy duty details. These are just a nice soft brush. So I'm going to be trying these for the landscape painting. I learned about these brushes from Richard Schmidt. He uses these really super long ones. I've been using these for years when they were the red handled ones. They're super nice, and they're actually pretty good, pretty well priced. So what I have is a number 4, 6, and 8 bright. Okay, so these are the square brushes, which are shorter. And then I have a super long flat number 4. So if you just compare the two number 4s here, look at that difference. So I'm going to use those. And then I have a little number 1 filbert for detail. All right. Very important with these brushes when you go into acrylics that you clean them, that you rinse them right away, and then do a proper cleaning at the end. All right. So that's that. So we're going to do all our heavy work with the bristle brushes and our detail work with these. All right, so I think I'm ready now to go back up to the easel, and I'll show you what I'm going to be doing with the sketch. So you can see that the sketch now is much lighter. I took my paper towel and I just started to wipe it down just to remove the excess. You can also wet it, and even more will come off. Just make sure you keep rotating your paper towel so it doesn't get super dirty. Okay. The more textured your piece, the more the charcoal will go inside all the pores. So just keep that in mind. So use a light touch, but you should still be able to see. You should still be able to see what I've got on here. And if you don't, then you can just refer to the photograph provided with the project. All right. So I'm going to get started by doing our underpainting. So we're going to underpaint the rock, the water. Going to underpaint the water, and you can use Payne's Gray for this. And I'm going to be using my large brush. The larger brushes cover a larger area. So I'm just going to dip my number 6 bristle in some water and blot it dry. Then I'm going to bring the paint up here. So chromatic black on the blue side. If you don't know what that is, then you can refer to my color mixing videos. But what chromatic black is black made with color, but I like to shift my colors. So I'm going to take, it's roughly the mixture, but two parts ultramarine blue and 1 part burnt sienna. And then you get a Payne's gray. That's a bit too blue. Going to add a little bit more burnt sienna. And the reason why I'm using a gray palette paper for this is because when you're working on white palette paper, whatever you're mixing is always going to be darker than white. I find working on gray to be a little bit more neutral. Okay, so see the big difference? The values. And if we want to know what the true underlying color is, then you just add a little bit of white. Okay, so that's what we're going for. I'm going to blot out that white on there. And then all I'm going to do is come in and put a light underpainting on this. I can even overpaint the rocks a bit, doesn't matter. But I do want to make sure that I cover all the canvas. Making sure that I work with horizontal strokes, so that's what the water's like. But when it comes down to here, I'm going to make this actually a little bit more blue. And pick up a bit more blue right onto the palette. It's a bit too blue. Burnt sienna right in there. There we go. Make that much darker. And I'm going to go with take a little bit of Quinacridone violet right in here. There we go. I'm going to come down here. So that's the shape of the rock. So negative space painting. I'm not painting the rock. I'm painting outside the rock to create the shape. And then we have a little bit of water here. Okay. Where else do we have water? We have water right here. We're supposed to have water there. But you can see I'm not worried about covering up the rock at all. And then we have lots of water up here. And there's no need to go all the way to the top. You can if you want. It's not really needed. So we are all going to run into this problem at one point in our painting when we run out of the color. What do? Just put more paint on the palette. And keep in mind, you're never going to get the exact same mixture. That's fine. That's fine. I think though up here, I think I want to make that a little bit more green. I'm going to take a little bit of Hansa yellow light right in there. There we go. So when you're painting rocks in water, the way I'm doing it here, the thing to keep in mind is that think of rocks having a whole bunch of ledges. So think of if you got rid of all the water and pictured what the rock would look like, that they're just all layered in ledges. And meaning a ledge, you've got a rock here and a rock here and a rock here and a rock, you know, they're all different heights and shapes and stuff like that. And having all those rocks at different heights is what creates all these nice little interesting things in the painting when it comes to, you know, the little waterfalls and ripples and little cascades and stuff like that. So that's, I'm looking here, so I've got my rock here. Yep, that's pretty good. Thinking rock, rock, height, rock, rock. Okay, I think we're good. But I might need to adjust this as I go. So now we don't have to wait for this to dry because now I didn't use any extenders, but it would be interesting to see what's going to happen, how long it takes for this paint to dry. So I rinsed this. I'm just going to put it aside. I'm going to go to a brush that's a little bit smaller. I'm going to go to a number 5, yeah, which is pretty good. Dip it into some water, blot it really dry. Now for the rocks, we're going to still use the same chromatic black, but we're going to flip it. So we're going to make it more on the brown side. If you don't want to do color mixing, you should be doing color mixing if you're following me, but you can also use burnt umber. Problem with just using burnt umber, the colors are going to be flat. The idea of color mixing is that you want them to be rough. So you see I just put it on there, a couple of strokes to mix. I even got a big blob of blue on there. And when you're putting in your color, use the brushes to create the really interesting shapes. And then when you will go to pick up another mix, go someplace else on the palette and don't mix it. Just pick it up and put it on there. Because you can naturally see the shapes on the... I even picked up some of the green one. You can start seeing some of the natural shapes starting to be built up on the rock. Okay, I'm going to go to another part, pick something up. Now I'm going to go over here. Not enough paint. Let's bring up a bit more paint. I'm going to mix it right in the same spot. Now in there, I'm also going to pick up a little bit of Quinacridone Violet. And the Quinacridone Violet is going to make it much darker because these rocks here are wet. And there's another rock right here. What you don't want to do is make, how I did the waterfall underpainting, you don't want to paint your rocks like that. Use the strokes, and here it's a little bit over blended. I can pick up a little bit of blue, just blue, and come in. And adjust that a little bit. You can see now, start seeing some other shapes. And I just realized now, without any effort at all, I created 2 rocks. So you can see how you've got dark, light, so that could be the rock coming down this way. Then I've got this rock right here. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to take some of that blue. I'm going to put it right there. Because this part's going to be highlighted. So now I want to go to another rock. And this one's going to be really dark, so I'm going to take a little bit more Quinacridone Violet in this, a little bit more burnt sienna. And I'm going to put this one right here. That's a bit too violet. A little bit of burnt sienna. There we go. And do the same thing here. By making these blocked shapes, the rocks are much easier to figure out. I'm not sure I like the shape of that one. I'll bring that like that. There we go. We've got another big rock here. I could probably use the same color. This one here, I'm going to underpaint it differently because I want to have, there's the sun peeking on this one a little bit. See, without any effort, I created a rock here and I created a rock here. They're really the same rock, but just by putting the strokes in there. Now what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to go over whatever paint is on my brush. I'm just going to paint the other rocks because I need to change the color to more green. So I don't want to waste paint. And I should have enough on there. That's going to be green. Oh, let me paint this one here. Where's this rock? This one right here. I'm going to underpaint this quite light because the sun's going to be hitting this. When we hit it with the sun, we're going to be creating kind of like a light gray. These rocks here aren't going to be painted like with that golden glow. You can if you want. I'm going to be painting them more gray. The green moss is what is really gonna is what's really going to shine on this. Down here. Okay, that's got green on it. This actually has green on the top, which I covered up. Now you can also use a reference photo to create your rocks if you want. So now I'm going to take a little bit of yellow right in here. Not going to be enough. Nope, a bit more yellow. What I want is I want a dark green. I should actually put some phthalo blue out on my palette. So I'll definitely be able to see that this is green. And when you're painting the rocks, you just go over the water just a little bit. If you have the benefits of having an easel, that would be really ideal to do this. If you're painting in an art journal, that is totally fine. Just make sure you stand up and walk away so you can see what your piece is going to look like. And then there's this here is also going to be green. This is the same rock here. This part here is in heavy shadow. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of burnt sienna, a bit more than that. Get that dark right here. This part's wet, actually not quite dark enough. A bit more blue. Now I do see some of the canvas showing through this here. I'm not going to worry too much about it. You're going to have to make sure that you really cover that up. And that's just because the paint is much thicker. And you can, once this is dry, you can go back over with another layer, or just take the color and just add some water so it goes inside the pores of the canvas. The colors we're using are so similar, it's not too bad. Okay, a bit more blue, a bit more burnt sienna. That's why the Bristle brushes, you can push the paint right into the canvas. And the color I have left, I can go back in now. Add a touch of water to that. Even though the colors are different, I'm just going to go over in some tiny spots just to make sure that the canvas is covered. But again, you'll be painting that when we work on the highlights as well. If you really look at this now, you can really see what's happening. You know what? I like that just the way it is. Class is done. Thank you for joining me. I love that. Love it, love it, love it. Now, while we're here, let me take whatever's left in my brush, and I'm going to use the excess paint now up here, the water. Let's make sure we have this completely covered. And you can also wipe back a little bit of color there as well to highlight. What you want to avoid doing is if you feel the paint getting tacky, try not to work on it because it'll you may pull up the paint. And that's a trait of using acrylics. It's nothing new. A bit more quinacridone violet, a little bit of burnt sienna as I'm gonna go back in here. When you're using the tube acrylics, because they're thicker, they do take a little bit longer to dry, so it gives you a bit more time. But you can always use the extender. I'm finding with the extender right now, I don't need it. I will show you how to use it though. So what I'm doing now is the parts of the rocks that are more gray, I'm putting the Quinacridone violet and burnt sienna mixture on there. And I'm absolutely loving the shapes of this. Now I'm looking at the shapes now, going through, making sure that we've got some interesting shapes. And I'm confused about what I did here. I'm confused what I did here. So that's a rock right here. That's a rock right here. Let me just reshape this a bit. Looks like it's two rocks, but I'm thinking now, you know what would be really neat? I've got the water coming down here. I could make water coming down here as well, blending right into here. I kind of like that. But let's stay on track. Readjusting your compositions for another class. So let's fix this up. So all I did was taking chromatic black and just making it back into one shape. There, now it's one shape. Go into a little bit of yellow. This is the part that's going to be green. There we go. That's better. That's better. I'm just readjusting now. I'm not really doing any detail work. I'm just fine-tuning. I'm doing some fine-tuning where the rock is green. This is one big rock here. All right, I think it's time to let this dry now. And I've got pretty well most of the canvas covered. It's going to happen, regardless, it's just so much texture. If you want something really smooth, then what to do is you can give your piece a light sanding, and then that will help eliminate those little white pockets. Alrighty, now you can use a heat gun on this to speed up the drying time or let it dry naturally, doesn't matter. Whichever way you're going to do it. This is going to take probably about 5 minutes to dry. I'll use the heat gun if I need to, and while this is drying, I'm going to go and give my brushes a really, really good rinse. So I'll see you in a few minutes. So this is all nice and dry now, and I'm going to apologize up front. Mia is going from room to room to room because she's warm, and so if you hear clickety clacks in here, she's coming in here, and hopefully she's not going to bother too much. Now we're going to start working on highlighting the rock. We're going to do 2 stages of highlights in the rock and 2 stages of highlights on the water. So let's start with the rock. Now you can use the bristle brushes for this part here because we're still kind of doing the groundwork. What you want to be careful of is when you're using bristle brushes to create highlights, especially on hard edges, that you don't have a brush that doesn't come to a perfect chisel edge, because you're going to get fuzzies on the outside. Oh, hello, Mia. And what I mean about that is, this is a brush, this, believe it or not, is a flat brush. I've used this brush so much that it's turned itself into a Filbert. Is this a Filbert or is this a, hang on a second. No, oh no, this is a Filbert. But look how rough it is. Okay, and this one is new. And then you've got this one. This one is well used. You can see it doesn't come to a perfect chisel edge. So this is where you want to go into using your synthetics, because they, when they're wet, they do come to a really good chisel edge. So let's work with these ones here just to experiment. They have to be wet. Don't use them dry. So just dampen them and then blot them. And one mistake that I'm seeing a lot of people making, because some of the private classes that I'm doing are through Skype and through my webinars where I can actually see what people are doing, is that when they're rinsing their brushes and they blot the brush, but they forget that there's water all up in here, and then when they're painting, gravity works and the water comes down and it thins the paint out, and then it blots right onto the painting. So make sure that when you've rinsed your brush, not only to blot the bristles, but get rid of the water on the handle and the ferrule, and when it comes to the bristles, just gently squeeze. You can pad this way. Normally you would say, well, just make sure you only rinse the bristles. My brush container is way over here, so it doesn't affect any of the electronic equipment. I just rinse. The water's up to here. So just be careful that when you're painting that there's no water run down. All right, so let's start with the little sable first, or the little Teflon. So we're gonna make a mix, and let's work with, let's try a little bit of Hansa Yellow Light, and let's take a little bit of burnt sienna. And the mixture that I'm making here, you can easily see if you've been doing my color mixing classes, this looks very much like raw sienna. So you can use that as well. And I want to put a tiny tad of red in that. Just a little bit. We want to make it a little bit more orange. I didn't want to use Pyrrole orange, the Traditions Pyrrole orange, because it'd be too bright. I didn't want, at this point, I didn't want to add white. So let's see what happens. So I did all the mixing with my brush. So what I'm going to do is just wipe off the excess. Okay, and then just come in and just take a little bit. And let's go over here. Let's start with this one here. And all we're doing is just applying a light layer of a highlight. See where the rock was much lighter there? See what happens here? Okay, take a little bit more. And I'm just going to go here. You're still using those short choppy strokes. That's not changing. So the light source is up here somewhere. So the rocks that are down way at the bottom section and on the left here, they're going to be darker. Let's go here. You see, I had a little white speckle there where the canvas was showing through. And I'm not liking this outline here. Mind you, this is going to be darkened up, so I'm going to leave that. And what's happening is wherever there's the blue mixture, the bluey mixture, when I'm putting this color over, it naturally just turns into a greenish tint. And we'll do one here as well. So the paint is starting to dry out already because it's such a small amount. So what you can do, you go into some extender. You can take some extender and we'll continue here. You can take some extender and you can put it all over what you're going to be painting. Don't do the entire painting, just work on small pieces at a time. And then you load your paint. And now it's almost like working wet on wet. It's almost like working wet on wet. The problem is that, I don't know if you'll be able to see, that's what I see. I see shine. So I've got this tilted so you guys don't get that shine, but I do. So bear with me if I kind of tilt this a little bit. Get rid of the rest in there. Okay, I'm gonna rinse that brush. So that was with a little Majestic number 4 Bright, which I use a lot. Well, let's try the Sabletek, see what happens. I'm gonna dampen it again. And now what I want to do is I want to highlight this stuff over here in a more of a gray mix. Now I don't have enough paint on here, so I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt sienna, go in here, grab a little bit of that yellow. So we need to lighten this a little bit. I'm going to take some extender right into the paint, and I'm also going to take a speck of titanium white. That is way too light. Way too light, so let's get a little bit of dark here. I'm going to steal some paint from here. You can see the values that I'm creating here. Still a little bit dark. It's a little bit dark, it's still a little too blue. So I'm going to take some burnt sienna. You're looking for a dull gray. That's not too bad. Okay, a little bit of extender. I'm just going to put some extender on my dirty brush. And if your paint's not drying fast, that's fine, but this is a good opportunity to see what it would be like painting with oils as well. The extender just gives you that opportunity to do that. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm painting all the areas that are more the gray parts. And this one's being put on dry. No extender on the rock. So this is like the mid-tone. And don't forget, as we're painting, we can always make adjustments. And because this had the extender, paint is still wet, I can tap between the colors and they blend quite nicely. Okay, and the rock is not completely wet here. And you're still working with those short choppy strokes. Oh, now I'm going to take more blue right into that mixture there. I'm going to take a little bit more water. A little bit of burnt sienna. And where did I go? I need to darken this here. And here. Not dark enough because there's still white in my brush. There we go. These are very dark, so I can even just take a fresh mixture. Avoid using black. But I'm going to, now I'm doing the reverse. I'm adding the shadows now to this rock here because it's dark because of it's in the foreground. So I wipe my brush, and whatever is left in my brush, I'm going to take a speck of white. That's even too much white. Let's just lighten this part a little bit. Oh, you know what? Let's use the other brush. So this brush is okay. This brush is okay. I'm curious on this one. This is the one I use all the time. So I just wet it. I'm going to pick up a little bit of extender right in the brush. Pick this up. You don't have as much control with this brush here, and I've got, all I see is shine. All I see is shine. A little bit more white. Okay, so for what I'm doing, I'm not, well, you know, I like the feel of the brush because I've used it for such a long time, but I'm not sure I like it for what I'm trying to do here. I don't have enough control. Oh, but you know what? Now that I look at it here without all that shine, I'm liking what I've got here. I'm liking this. I'm liking this. And when you're putting your highlights on, don't over highlight right away, because acrylics dry darker. So you have to make sure you keep that in mind. You have to make sure you keep that in mind. Going around, seeing what I've got here. This is very dark. This is the wrong color. So I'm going to put that back, and I'm going to go back to my small little synthetic here. I need to make a dark mixture. I'm going to add a little bit of Quinacridone. Wow, so the same thing, the chromatic black on the blue side, a little bit of Quinacridone violet, and I need to make a big adjustment here because I've lost my spot. This is super dark. So I'm putting my darks back in. And then it goes to the green highlighted part. I'm going to get a little bit more burnt sienna in there. Put my darks back here. You can see the big difference when you do that by using the choppy strokes. I went all wonky with this rock shape. So how are we going to fix this? This shape of this rock here goes like this, like this, like this, like this. This is not what I wanted. I don't know what went wrong there. So I'm going to fix that shape. I want this rock to come out. So basically, which is a shame because I love the highlight here, I'm going to reshape this. Like that. So that's the rock here. And I should have did this with the bristle brush. That's better. So now what I can do now, see this shape here? Watch, I can take this brush, negative space painting, and I can adjust the shape of this rock as well. That is much better. Much, much better. Okay, I'm going to come in here. This is dark as well. Just making a bit of an adjustment here. This is still wet from the extender. Just going over, just putting a little bit more fuzzy details in there. Putting a little bit more dark in here. Now when you're painting, I don't have that luxury right now. You should be able to see what I'm doing here. But when you're painting, if you have a glare, please turn your piece. Like, this is so you can see without a glare, but all I see is shine. And I can get it. You should not see any shine like that, but you're seeing it on a weird angle. So just taking leftover paint here, putting the darks back in, adjusting the shapes a little bit. Again, this should be done with the bristle brush, not the synthetic, because they'll break down faster. They break down much faster. Just want to get that bit of a different shape in here. Now I'm going to take do I have any white left on here? I'm just taking some white, and I'm just making a little bit of an adjustment here to redefine that highlight. There's not much because the sun is way up here and these rocks are way down below. And also this video is a little bit longer because this painting study is quite large. It can actually be used as a painting on its own. And I'm just going to change that here, reshape that. There we go. Fortunate thing is I lost all that beautiful highlight up here. I'm gonna have to do it again. But I'm looking at this now and I'm kind of liking what this is looking like. A little bit better. A little bit better. I'm liking that. What I don't like though is the way I'm looking at it here is I'm finding this a little bit too chalky. I'm not going to worry about it. Anytime you add white to stuff, it ends up kind of looking chalky. When you come in, we work our second layer of highlights on top of this. You can glaze, so you can add a transparent layer on top. You'll keep all the brush stroke, but the color will change. So that's why I'm not too worried about that. I'm also going through making sure I've covered all the parts of the canvas now that things have dried. And I'm just taking some ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and a little bit of Quinacridone violet, coming back in here, covering all the darn little canvas holes. Again, if you're following along with me and you're doing this step, use a bristle brush. Do not use your synthetic. And why haven't I changed? Because I'm too lazy to go and reach for my brush. Oh, that's bad. That's bad. Bad, bad, bad. Okay, I'm just going back in here. And I'm pretty sure that when I'm done this, I'm going to see some more little pockets. The water here has to be very dark. All right. Rinse that up. Okay, so we've done our initial highlights with our rock. I do want to come back though and let's try doing a highlight with a bristle. That should be, yeah, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. And I want to go back and do some more work. So just take my blue and more burnt sienna, go right in here. Let's see if I can steal some of this. Want a little bit of yellow in there. This is a real nice gray now. I'll take a little bit more yellow in there. A little bit of burnt sienna. You're almost looking like for a mustard color. A bit more yellow. And where you run into a little bit of color mixing problems is not so much the color mixing problem itself. Hansa yellow light is more transparent. Ultramarine blue is transparent. So that's where you kind of run into some issues. This is actually not too bad. There we go. That's got some green on it. The second highlight on these rocks is going to be a really, really bright green. I love that shape. And if you're not sure where to find rocks, like the inspiration for this is living in Hamilton, one of the benefits that I have is Hamilton is known as the city of waterfalls, and I'm blessed by being a 2-minute walk from Mount Albion Falls. And although now they're having to put barricades up so people can't go in there because of the dangers, there's been a lot of rope rescues taking place, you can walk around the other side, probably take about an hour to do it, and go from the bottom. You can walk around, and then walk up the creek, and there's a lot of rocks like this, and it's absolutely beautiful. Another waterfall painting that I did when there was water was the Hermitage, and really beautiful. Billy Green is one of my favorites. I painted that one live, and which was nice. Oh, this is gorgeous. This is gorgeous. I want a bit of a harder edge right here. I'm going to take a little bit of burnt sienna right on my brush. I have to reload my palette. And I want a little bit of a harder edge right here. Maybe a bit of blue. And this is because the rock is wet here. I want that to be, see how you get a nice shape here? Like that. I'm loving that, loving that, loving that. I can definitely see the nice pattern taking place. Just make sure that you don't overblend the color. You overblend the color, forget it, then won't matter what you do. All right, rinse, rinse, rinse. Now we're going to start highlighting some of the water. So that highlight that I was doing was with a little Filbert brush. It was a little number 2 Filbert brush. And usually when I'm doing my initial highlighting of water, you can do it with a bristle. I prefer doing it with a a softer brush. I'm going to use a little number 6 Bright. You can use a synthetic Sabletek, doesn't matter. And to do the water, what I'm thinking of is it would be a really nice thing to add a little bit of green in this, because up here is where the sun is. And again, I'm going to only paint about that much. Because the color is brighter, the water is brighter, I want to work more of a green into this. You might want to also experiment with phthalo blue, which is really nice. Then I'm going to take a touch of white. Oh, there we go. Look at that. This is blue-green. And this part here, the more layers that you do, you'll get more details. So, and all I'm going to do is just wide U-strokes. And this brush is a little too small. Wipe, wipe, wipe. I'm going to use it though in a bit. Let me go to the number 3 Bristle. Pick up a little bit of extender. There we go, that's better. So I'm using these wide strokes, not covering everything. Oh, let's take it right to the top. So wide U strokes. Can we call it X strokes? You would do these X strokes like this if you really wanted a lot of ripples in the water. We're going to do that down here. But up here the water's pretty calm. There's not too much happening. I'm going to cover up that line I put there. And as the water comes closer, it gets darker. And as you start adding the whites, I can do the whole thing with a bristle brush. As the water comes down here, do a little bit more motion because it's coming down. And you can make this as detailed as you want, blended as you want. It doesn't really matter. too bright, just cover it up with a little bit of dark. You see how nice that works? With a synthetic, this might be a little bit hard on your brush. Take a little bit of extender. Just blending that out a little bit more. You want to make sure that you're working horizontal. There you go. When we come with the highlights with the water, it'll be a lot easier. I'm going to take a little bit more blue. A little bit of white. Then you come in. You can do it wet on wet or wet on dry. And just putting just a little bit. Oh, that's Mia. So taking a little bit of a different color, coming in here. You don't want to use pure white. If you were working with oils or a pure wet on wet, then yeah, that would work. But if you use pure white on dry, it's going to look funny. Okay, I want to start with a bit more ultramarine blue. Again, using those strokes. And the ultramarine, because the surface is still wet, my canvas is still wet, it lets me blend quite nicely. And I want to make this a little bit darker over here. I'm going pure ultramarine blue now. Everything's wet. And although this painting is about painting rocks, not about painting water, but look at that. So this here would, see how this is dark coming across like this? Picture something happening up here and it'd be like a reflection in the water. And that's where you have that nice dark. That's why it's so important that you not cover up everything. And if you then take just white, try that again. Oh, that's too much white. And just some small spots like this, and you get those ripples in the water. More ripples equals more motion in the water. Less ripples if the water is smoother. Adds instant dimension, instant 3D dimension. But I don't like how these look like little V's, so I'm just going to straighten those out a little bit. There you go. Okay, so as you can see how this is starting to take shape. That's why it's important to do it in layers. And when I mean doing it in layers, you do your foundation, you do you're adding your darks, you add in your highlights, add your highlights again, build up more details and highlights. So you don't paint something to absolute completion, then you paint this to completion. Then it's the painting. Your painting's going to look so rough here and so detailed here, and it's not going to make sense. So it's best to try to paint it in layers, because that way you can leave it and come back to it at any time. Hope that makes sense. Oh, I hear the kids outside. Okay, ultramarine blue, white again, but we need to make this a little bit darker. Well, if you want to make blue dark, what do? You add opposite on the color wheel. I'm going to take a speck of yellow, a speck of red. I'm going to go right in here. I want to neutralize that a little bit. And take a little bit of burnt sienna. And this is not at all the color I was going for. I went wrong somewhere. I went wrong somewhere. Let me try that again. Turn more. Oh, okay. Should have been Quinacridone violet, not red. Let's try this again. Blue, speck of Quinacridone violet, a little bit of yellow, which is going to shift a little bit more of a bluey green, and just a speck of burnt sienna. Of course, I didn't make enough of the paint, and a little bit of white. There we go. And now I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and that's not light enough. Add a bit more white. You want to make this mixture lighter And what you have, I'm gonna have to go to my little synthetic here. I'm gonna use the Majestic now, because most of you all have these types of brushes. It's a little bit rough on the brush. I'm gonna add a little bit of water to that. Where am I here? The water makes it a little bit more transparent, and especially for the small areas. So this is where it's starting to flow down now. And this is where the magic is going to happen. Now you may have your own idea of how you want to see your water appearing. If you look at photographs, sometimes the photographer has slowed down the shutter speed, so it looks like just like a fuzz, like a perfect blended movement here. I'm going to paint this a little bit more as to what I would see. So coming down here, and there's a rock ledge here. Okay, so this is going to come up here. I'm using those U strokes, and then this is where it comes down. And your paint needs to be a little bit watery to do this. So it comes down like this. And please, please, please don't use a fan brush for this. Don't use a fan brush. And I'm not going to cover everything. So the water's coming here, splashing up a little bit against the rock. So where it's splashing up against the rock, you can use a good amount of white in there. Don't put a solid line. And then you make your definition of where. So we're thinking right about here, where it's coming down. Again, don't cover everything. You can always put the darks back in though, so don't worry about that. And then here it's, now this is where I'm going to switch to a small bristle, because I'm doing this and I'm going, you're just basically fluffing that water up. This is one of my favorite brushes. I don't want to ruin it. The brushes, when you have your favorite, you take extra special care. The hog bristle brushes, I'm not too worried about those because I replace those so frequently anyways. So I'm going to make up a bit more paint. So ultramarine blue, touch of Quinacridone violet, and the paint's going to be a little bit more on the purple side. Okay, and a little bit of burnt sienna to gray it down, and a little bit of white. Not going to get the exact same mixture. Wipe off the excess and load a bit more white. Okay, wipe off the excess, take a little bit of water, and you're going to add just enough water to your paint, but you don't want the water to run down the canvas. That'd be too much water. Wipe off the excess. So touch, push, lift, and you're going to turn the brush so you get all these little random shapes. And as it comes down here, it's going to just go back into those horizontal strokes. A bit more water. Don't cover everything. I'm going to have to add a little bit more dark in there. I think I covered a little too much. And now as we come forward, I'm gonna add a little bit more water to my brush. I want to make the paint really, really, really wet, because now we're basically doing a glaze. Again, you can also use the extender. One of the beauties of adding the extender is that it's not going to break down the strength of the paint. If you add too much water to your paint, you weaken the pigment. So using extender is better. Extender is almost like it's a transparent glue. Okay, now I'm gonna rinse that. Go back to my little synthetic. Pick up a little bit of paint. And I'm holding my hand like this for stability. If you've got a maul stick, or let's say a big stick and you're on a canvas, put the maul stick right on top and you can support your hand on that. I'm just putting in some details now, coming in just with a speck of paint. Now if you do this, okay, so I did it this way, come right down, the paint is on the bottom of the brush and you're going to get more paint. If you were to turn it the other way, you're getting less paint. So you can use that to your advantage as well. And with this one here, I like the idea of having more paint because it's the physical texture of the paint is creating some ridges, which is what creates the interest. And the further we come down, it's going to be more blended. The extender is on here now. It's going to be smoother. And it's going to become a little bit darker, so less paint, but right, I'm going to go to the more the darker color here. Right in here, almost like a zigzag. Ah, one zigzag too much. Wet my brush, blot it, and let's see if I can blend that out. There we go. And now what you're doing is your eye is being drawn way up here. And all these little paint watermarks that are covering the rocks, easy peasy to fix. Let me go back to my bristle brush. I've got my, it's a number 3. I'm going to load a little bit of paint there. So loading, come back to here. I like the bristle brushes for this technique. So I'm not going to make it really white here because as the water's coming and it's falling, it's thinning out. One waterfall that is so amazing, Grindstone Creek. It looks like there's a skull in the back. Okay, so now I'm going to put a little bit more detail in here. Okay. Where it actually comes over, that's the whitest part. And the shape will be completely dependent on how you've got your rocks. So there's a rock here, and there's another rock that's kind of hidden in here. The ledge is like this. This is my ledge. And that paint stroke is a little bit thick, so I'm going to have to come in and fix that. Touch, push, lift. Okay. And I'm just going to come in here just with a little bit of paint, not too much. Go back in here. This is still wet up here. You see that this is much more purple here. The sun is up here shining, and as it comes down, less sun, so the reflection is more coming off the rocks. Rinse that. All right, so now it's time to highlight the rocks again, which is still really wet. Okay, so I'm gonna have to let that dry unless I want to work wet on wet, but the amount of wetness on the rock now, it's tacky wet, not wet paint, it's tacky, which means if I were to come on here and start painting, I can pretty well guarantee the paint would lift up. Okay, when your paint is tacky, you gotta let it dry. Okay, because otherwise you lift up your paint, then you're gonna have to correct that, and nobody likes correcting paint that's lifted up because it's tacky. All right, I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna rinse out my brushes, grab a cup of tea, and I'll see you in a few. All right, it's all dry. Mia's right under my desk, so hopefully I'll be able to continue painting without her. She has this thing when she's sleeping, and if her paws are touched, she gets all growly. Previous life, previous owner issues. So we'll see if we can paint with her. And I don't like not having the animals in the studio when they come in, because most of you watching all have pets. So, you know, when Chaos jumps on the table and does something and paws get into the paint and she, you know, something happens to the painting, then I show you guys how to fix it. So that's why I don't mind the animals being in the studio. It's time to start adding some more highlights. Now we're going to work on the highlights, the next layer highlights on the rocks. And I'm going to be using a combination of, where did it go? Where's my little bristle brush? I need a really rough bristle brush for this part here. So I'm going to use my rough. So if you have one that's super rough, this is a little bit big though. This is brand new. You can tell the difference what's new and what's been used. Let's see if I can do it with this. I'm going to make a green mixture. Now I was contemplating using Hansa Yellow Light and Phthalo Blue for this, because I absolutely love that mixture. Well, let's see if we can get something with Ultramarine Blue. I don't so much like the green mixed that's created with Ultramarine Blue and the yellow, because the blue, Ultramarine Blue is blue that leans towards violet, and Hansa Yellow Light is yellow that leans towards green. So they kind of dull each other down a little bit. That's not too bad. Okay, so I'm going to blot out all the excess. Just take the tip and pounce it on there. Now to get the moss, I'm going to be touching it. Now I need to really rough this brush up. This is why the bristle brushes, I don't mind, I end up replacing them quite frequently. I want something quite rough, because that's the way moss grows. And as you're running out of paint, you work it down a little bit. Now, if you are on a tight budget, you can pick up at the store, let's see if I can reach them. The Royal Soft Grip, which are, depending on where you are geographically in the world, $2.99, $3.99 for a brush. These are amazing. Amazing. If so, these are the, you know, they're starting to get worn out, and they work out super well. And these ones here, you can mishmash them specifically for a pouncing technique. Now that I'm saying that, that probably would have been better for me, what I wanted to do. Okay, so just pouncing that in there. And I am going to have to come back and I'm going to add some darks. I am going to add some darks back into my rock here. Some hard edges. And as you're running out of paint, you can work it down a little bit. And what it is the moss is where the water is actually touching. just going to put a little bit on here. You don't need a lot. Oh, avoid that hard line, because I'm pressing hard, then you get a hard edge there. I'm just going to fuzz that out. There we go. And I'm going to come, do I have anything that's dark here? No. No. So take whatever is left in your brush if you need to make a correction. Speck of Quinacridone Violet. Wipe out the excess, and I'm just going to come in and these types of adjustments are common. If you're painting this and you don't have to make any adjustments, then I don't know. Adjustments are always necessary when you're painting. So now I want to create that harder edge. I'm going to come in with that dark paint here on my little synthetic brush. Water. And I want to put get my darks back. I need that chisel edge. Hopefully I'm not going to get in the way. I am really reaching here. I'm painting about the entire arm length, where like my arm is extended all the way. Hopefully my head hasn't gotten in the way either. You see, we get these lines in here. You get the rough parts of the rock. This was just a little too smooth for me. So I'm putting out some darks in there. Because the water, this is sticking out there, although there is moss here. I want that to be a little bit darker. There we go. That's better. And in here, let's bring some darks back in here. I'm finessing the edges now. Okay. And I want to get a nice, this I'm going to brighten up. This and this I'm going to brighten up a lot. This I want to make even darker. And this one here I also want to make darker. Now I'm going to take a little bit of blue, a little bit of burnt sienna, and go right onto the canvas. A little bit more blue. In order to have light, you need to have dark. And I want to repeat the exact same thing now with the blue, burnt sienna here. Because I'm not a fan of that light. It looks nice, but I'm not a fan of that. Nothing there. A bit more blue. And a little bit of burnt sienna. This is wet here. Just putting some shape back in here. This is just touching up. You may not have to do this, so you can always skip ahead to the next section if you want. And I need more yellow. The other color you can use for some of the highlights is yellow oxide. You can do that. But I don't, oops, I left my brush in water. Don't leave your brushes in water. Yellow. Rinse your brush first. Hansa yellow light and a bit of burnt sienna will make something close to yellow oxide. And when you glaze over that, the highlight takes on a bit of a green tint, a little bit of a sunshine color, because it's transparent. Just make sure you don't overdo it. Just where the rocks stick out. So it gives you the illusion of a little bit of moss, not too much. Now here, if you want to darken this again, just come back into your dark and just work it opposite. And then that brings your dark back in. It's supposed to bring your dark back in. Didn't work for me. You know why? Because I had white or and yellow. There, yeah, just work it backwards. There we go. Sorry, I just have to turn this because I can't see. There we go. So creating a little bit of a highlight. Not too much. Coming in with some dark just to blend that in. All I see is shine. Go. Now you can see the shine there too. All right, we are almost done. When we want to come in now to create something even brighter, again, this is where I would really prefer a much lighter mix. Use that brush. A much lighter mix for the moss. I'm going to use my little soft grip. This is a little number 3 flat. This is not new. These are not new. And I'm going to just dampen a little bit of water. And I'm going to really mash it. Now, it's up to you whether you want to do this or not. These brushes I have no problem replacing because they are so economical. I'm just going to touch. And this is, you're going to do pouncing. Now, there are brushes specifically for pouncing. So you can, and when you want to pounce, have it painting facing you. I'm pouncing into glare, so I have no idea if this is working or not. It just gives you the illusion of moss. Oh, perfect. Okay, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Just a little bit here. This brush is too new. It needs to be really mashed. Mashed to the point where you normally say, "Oh, it's ruined," like that. But this brush is a little bit big for what I'm doing. I'm going to go right into yellow. Now, that's way too much paint. You're going to end up getting blobs. It's just a stipple. It's just a stipple. And it will dry a little bit darker. Liking that. And just, I don't know if I can get anything off of here. Just a little bit here on the top. You don't want to make it too bright because this is where it's shadowed. So just whatever's left over in your brush. Not too much. And make sure it's the parts that are close to water, where it typically would splash. And now, to show you, ultramarine blue, same dirty brush, a little bit of burnt sienna. Tap, tap, tap. Now what you can do is right in the dark parts, you can do the same thing and just fuzz out the ones that are in the shadowed area. And let's see, there's one here. Where did I add a little bit too much right here? Just gonna put a little bit of that dark back in there. Take whatever's left over, go in the corner. Just knocks things down just a little bit. That's the beauty when you're working with acrylics like this, is that you can make some really nice adjustments. Overlay, 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 because everything dries so nice. That's much better. Much better. That makes more sense. There we go. All right. I'm loving that. And at this point now, you would come in and you're going to make whatever adjustments that need to be made. This is up to your paint. This is based on what your painting has. For me, I don't need a heck of a lot left to work. I'm going to go with my long brush, except I want to add just a few hits of more white. I'm going to take some white right into that rock mixture. Speck of water. I'm going to come in and bring that in here like this. Coming down. And I'm still not sure about that. And I'm just putting some more highlights in here. Bit more water in there. Add a little bit of motion. Just on the edges here. This is where the water is actually hitting the sides of the rocks. I can even come in and just glaze a little bit of that color right on top. You don't want to make it look white because it'll look funny. And oops. I have to fix that anyways. Now I want to add more dark back in here. That'll be my final adjustment. I want to put my dark back in there. I need more blue. Reach over. More blue. Whoopsie. When you're squeezing out, if that's what you get, clean that up right away. Otherwise, your caps are going to be sticky. Ultramarine blue. The burnt sienna, I want it more on the blue side. And I'm going to add some dark back in here. And then I'm going to put white back over. So I'm just breaking that. That line was just too perfect. That line was too perfect. I can deepen a little bit of water. Deepen this a little bit more to make it really dark. And that's the beauty when you're working with the paint that's wet. You're not going to lose all those strokes that you already made, because you're working with a transparent layer. This is glazing. And I want the water to be darker, close to the edge. And I'm going to deepen this a little bit more. Stuff that sticks out that's too obvious on edges, like these little pieces here, they draw too much attention. I want it to be just barely visible. That's why there's a little rock here. I didn't even focus on that. Can make that a bit more black even. Can make this a bit more black. This is just a side piece. Even in here, add a little bit more dark. And that's the beauty when you're working with acrylics, that you can do all that stuff. Now let's see what happens if I try to do this wet on wet, and it works just fine. There you go. Let's put more white. I dampen the bristles first. Now I'm going to take quite a good chunk of white right here. I'm going to wipe that out and just blend. And this is just where it's just going right over. It's the highest point. And take the other mixture and just come back in. And then just some ripples right along. Make sure it's not a perfectly straight line, because that'll be boring. And that bristle brush would be really good for this part here as well. You can also just scumble and then just come back in, a little bit of water. That's a bit too much water. When I say too much water, not the water that I'm painting, too much water in my brush. And I would say that's pretty well it. Just add a little bit of motion here, not too much. So try this out and see, see what you can do with it. And keep in mind, now this was only supposed to be a 1 hour painting study, and it's turned out to be something a lot more, because I really want to show you a lot and really try the different techniques that I was showing you. Another thing that you can do with the rocks, if you don't want moss on your rocks, I would typically use Pyrrole orange, but Hansa yellow light, a speck of red to make this, makes a muddy orange, and a little bit of white, and then you can take that mixture Oh yeah, make sure you add water to that so it's more transparent. And then you can highlight your rocks. Now I'm going back over my green part because this is transparent. It is going to be a bit more neutral. But you can add a little bit of a highlight just on the rock parts. And here you can bring that down a little bit more. So there's no moss here, but there could be a little bit of a highlight here. Just be careful how much that you add to this. You want to make it just a little bit lighter than the base color, but not as light as this part here. Just a little bit. And again, this is something you don't have to do. Now I'm painting, you see the direction of my brush? All the paint is running down the ferrule. So when you're painting in an easel, you're typically painting like this, but I'm going to be in the way. That's why I'm painting down. Well, you may not have to reload your brushes often as I do. See, the paint is now dried in the brush. Water, come back in and just dissolve that. See how rough I'm being? And it creates the rocks to be a lot more natural. And I think I have just a little bit left. There we go. So this is another highlighting technique that you can use. I like highlighting rocks that have some type of orange to them. It's nice and soft. Just be careful on how intense it is. So make sure you knock it back a little bit with burnt sienna. Okay. Last thing, white with a speck of yellow in it. And I'm going to come in and just on the very top here, the yellow is just going to make it a little bit warmer. And just make sure you come across. And that's it. Done. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and again, give it a shot. Post a picture of what you've done below the video. I would love to see, you know, a link to your picture, or even post it below the video. I know you guys are shy to post pictures of your stuff, but I still would love to see what you've done. But give this little piece a try, and you know, don't be afraid to experiment. You know, try different brushes, try different things. This piece is a fairly dark piece. How you brighten it up is up to you. I'm looking at this. Yeah, I could probably highlight this a little bit more with a little bit more yellow, but it turned out pretty nice. I'm just gonna, so I can just turn out and add more yellow to that. And by using pure yellow on the damp brush, it remains transparent, so I'm not going to lose all that work that I did. All those brush strokes will still remain intact. So remember, when you're working with your more natural blends, make sure you rinse your brushes right away, because you don't want the paint drying in the brush. And when you're painting, you see I'm painting this way. Remember, gravity is going to pull the paint down this way. So try painting with your arm up. Always underpaint dark, because then it makes it much easier to add your lights. Don't be afraid of contrast. Don't be afraid of trying new things. If you've got you know, some rough bristle brushes and ones that come with those paint kits or whatever, mangle those up and use those for, you know, doing some experimental stuff. What else? Oh yeah, layers, layers, layers. Don't be afraid of layers. I totally forgot to do this part here. Layers and layers and layers. Don't be afraid. Continual layers. So underpainting, first layer, second layer, work all throughout the painting. If you see something in your painting that's bugging you, I would like to say, you know, work on it after you're finished doing whatever you're doing, but I'm thinking you probably should fix whatever that is right away, because that's just going to keep bugging you, and it's, you know, going to affect the overall look of the painting, because you may then compensate in other areas for that. So, and as I tilted this, I just realized that there's a part here that's still quite light. I didn't add my dark. So I'm just going to go in here and add my dark. This is super dark here. And it's really easy to do that. Just burnt sienna, burnt umber, no white. I touched the white. And yeah, so just go through, take it slow. Put my dark back in there. And yeah, just, you know, what's the worst that can happen? You can paint over. I mean, I made in this probably, I don't know how many adjustments, because it needs to be done. So now you have an idea about painting rounded rocks in water, and they're rounded because of the water, the erosion. We've got some nice moss on there, something different instead of just a regular plain old highlight. If you want to do a really strong highlight, pure paint, you know, you can do a really, really strong highlight, and then depending on what it is, you can blend it out a little bit more. For what I'm doing here, it doesn't really make sense, but I'm just going to fuzz it out. So if you're doing the moss, remember to keep the moss really, really, really soft. You know, do your little pouncing. Oh, this brush is pretty good for that. If you're doing highlights on rock, like pure rock, use your nice, good chisel edge brush, and you know, you can make that orange. Try to avoid using pure white for water. Make sure that it's tinted with something so it looks more natural. And then just from there, just have fun. You know, have fun with your piece, and you know, do some practices. You know, do some different rocks and, you know, different colors of water. Make the water more green, and go outside. Take pictures. You know, go to a riverbed if you have the benefit of having that in where you live, and just take pictures and pictures and pictures. Crop down to a very small section of what you want to work on, and just work on that. If you really want to do a more precise drawing, use the lineless grid system to create your sketch, and go from there. Just if you want to do that, use a soft graphite pencil or a soft charcoal pencil. That way you can erase some of those adjustments. All right, so let's just take this off. Whoopsie. There we go. So that didn't turn out too bad. I'm really happy with this. Now I need to clip it somewhere because it's, you can see, there we go. So that turned out pretty nice, and that's going to go into, this will probably end up going into a little frame. I don't know if I want to put this into a journal, because this turned out a lot nicer than I wanted. My intention to start was to be painting 2 or 3 rocks, but I hope you got a better benefit out of doing this. All right, I'm going to clean up my terrible mess and go work on your piece. Don't forget to post a picture below the video, or a link to, you know, if you posted it, you know, on your blog or something, post a link just so I can take a look at it and so we can all see what you've done. All right, hope you enjoyed it, and until I see you next time, stay inspired.